Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about how to be a subject matter expert in any field, not just in petroleum engineering. Although I'm going to relate a lot of my experiences to the oil and gas industry, particularly in reservoir engineering. Before we get to the content, please be sure to like this video, subscribe so you can get more content in oil and gas and professional development topics, and please be sure to comment on the video below so I can incorporate your feedback into future videos. Please be sure to hit that notification bell when you do subscribe, because I upload whenever I want. Well, let's get to the content. That's what he gets for being in the way. Okay, so this is not going to be another jump cut. This is going to be straight to a stream of consciousness. I wrote some things down for the sake of organization because I'm not going to remember. There's quite a few things I do like to talk about in order to be a subject matter expert. The first thing that I'd like to talk about, and it's an obvious one on how to be a subject matter expert in any field, particularly the oil and gas industry, is to read. Read frequently. I had a mentor that told me that if I read one SPE paper in a particular subject every week, I could be an expert. The caveat to that is be careful on what you read. For example, is the content too commercial? Is the content not peer-reviewed? Is the content have its limitations? At Texas A&M University, when we did paper reviews and literature reviews, we'd ask a series of questions to ask on the limitations of the paper, the strengths, the weaknesses of the paper, and opportunities to further explore after reading the paper. But actively reading and actively asking those questions is really important in order for you to become a subject matter expert. And I suggest that that would be something to pursue. The next thing that I would talk about is ask questions to extend your curiosity. Now, what that means is the who, what, when, where, why. Again, the limitations of a paper on what you read on the latest and greatest. And keep asking those questions on what more can you learn. You can get yourself down a rabbit hole that way, but that's the beauty of being a subject matter expert. It's not about going through the weeds in a certain period of time. It's just going through the weeds at your own leisure. And if you follow a rabbit hole, you may find something like Alice in Wonderland. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is talk to other experts and see what resources they have. It's easy to exist in a silo whenever you're trying to be a subject matter expert in something, or when somebody already views you academically as someone who's a subject matter expert or has some kind of authority. Chances are that you may be reluctant to ask other people on other things. Chances are. I don't know your personality. But I would suggest reaching out to other experts in the field, learning from them, developing a mentorship relationship with them, and teaching eventually in that information is something that I would suggest. Talking to other experts have allowed me to read more SPE papers, create a YouTube channel, create a podcast, allowed me to initiate a conversation and start interviewing people. The world is your oyster. The technical world especially is your oyster. The next thing I'd like to talk about is that, and this is a hard one for me, but admit to not knowing something and appreciate the unknowns. I used to think that with a couple years of studying, I had to know all the answers, but in reality, you end up having more questions than answers. That's the running joke, and that's the beauty of it. When you don't know something, say that you don't know. Say that those are your limitations. As much as we like to seek out other papers and other resources limitations, understanding your own limits is equally important, and letting other people know also builds credibility. So, next thing I'd like to talk about is developing an intuition what to look for and where to look for it. I brought this tip up because when I took the PE exam, I had a whole thing of books to where I had two people carry a barrel or wheelbarrow worth of books to my exam room. That's when we had the pencil paper exam. What I mean to say with all of this is I studied so much for the exam that I knew what page to find a certain answer to a question. I knew where to find what book, what chapter, to even today, when someone asks me a question, I can tell them what paper to look after. Like, hey, there was a paper that was written for that. There was a paper on that. And similar to there's an app for that, SPE, there's a workshop for that. There's a conference for that. There's a forum for that. There's a paper for that. You need to develop that intuition to know what to look for and where to look for it. And you only develop that intuition based on the previous few things that I mentioned before. But the key thing is to develop that intuition because that makes you a technical expert. The next thing I'd like to talk about is to love the grind. And remember, being an SME is a marathon, not a sprint. Remember I said a few points ago, especially the first point, where you go down a rabbit hole at your own time being, but it's not like a time test. This SME thing is a grind. Being a subject matter expert is a grind, and it's okay. And the key is to not look at it as a grind, but a journey, a process. I call it a grind because it can be frustrating at times when you don't know an answer to a question. There might be some things that keep you up at night, such as some reading, for example, or how to solve a problem. We're engineers, we're geoscientists, we're whoever who's watching this video in being a subject matter expert. But the grind, the journey is beautiful. That's what I'm trying to say. The next one I'm going to talk about, and I referred to this a little bit a couple points ago, is to share your knowledge. You retain most of the information that you teach. When you do this, you allow other people to build rapport with you. You retain what you have learned. You also realize different styles, communication styles of other folks. And you become an effective teacher that way, an effective communicator. When you do this, when you teach, when you publish, you get active feedback from other people. It's a two-way street for sure. And that's the beauty of becoming a subject matter expert. I like to think of it as the Mario games, where when Mario eats something, he just gets bigger and bigger, and you hear the sound effects in the background. Every single time I read a paper, I feel like I hear those sound effects in the background. Not because my nickname is Yoshi. The last thing I want to talk about is do not stretch yourself too thin. It's about the depth of the subject, not the breadth of the subject. I had a challenge one time where I told one of my bosses, I want to be a subject matter expert in reservoir engineering. And then him being the PhD said, well, what in reservoir engineering? And that hit me because there were a lot of subjects in reservoir engineering. There's business development planning, there's simulation, there's RTA, there's PTA. There's so many things you can do in reservoir engineering. But it really challenged me to think about what is the specific thing that I want to go into. Right now, I want to be more of a generalist in reservoir engineering. And there are things I know enough of the planning side. I know enough of RTA, PTA, and DCA, and reserves, enough to be dangerous. I'm still in my journey in what specifically I want to be, if you're wondering. Well, that's everything that I wanted to talk about. These were 8 points that I think are important in order to become a subject matter expert in any field. I know I referred mostly to the oil and gas industry because that is my level of expertise, but I do suggest that you carry the tips that I talked about and apply that to other industries as well, such as tech, such as healthcare. I don't know. Whoever's watching this, let me know what industry you're in. Put it in the comments below. That's everything that I wanted to talk about. As usual, please be sure to like, subscribe, share the video on those who want to become a subject matter expert. And the other thing I want to say is you don't have to be a PhD in order to be a subject matter expert. You also don't need to have 50 years of work experience in order to be a subject matter expert. You need to have the drive. You need to have the grit. You need to have the passion. That's all, folks.